that was an entirely autonomous pipeline Fiverr gig right there. I didn't do anything. You saw I had my hands up like this, basically like I was being interrogated. And this just shows one of many things that I think are not well represented in the AI YouTube content sphere, where no one talks to us about how to actually go beyond using an AI coding assistant. It's awesome to learn RuCode's newest cool optimization, but no one talks about, okay, I know how to use RuCode at a decent level. What do I then do with it? And that is why I want to do this video as a tutorial of building this, because it will teach us a more architectural foundation of understanding of what we do when we know enough to do things. So for today's video, I want to do a tutorial, but it's kind of a different type of tutorial. I noticed the large amount of interest in the AI coding assistants and things like RuCode, and they're very cool because they can supercharge your productivity, make you more efficient, and really help you write and ship things perhaps better and faster. Now with that, I thought about doing videos just testing models like I do with those kind of add-ons and VS Code extensions and things like that, but I became slightly enraged for a couple of reasons. First, I find that just kind of being like a side observer of some of these improvements in the field, it seems like every 2 months there's a new one of these that comes out that's like the hot new coding assistant, and then the old ones kind of get replaced and I never hear about them again. Two, I think that once you have learned to use one pretty acceptably, the best thing then to do is not necessarily keep looking at like what's the next productivity hack that came out for this pipeline and things like that, but to actually go ahead and just build something with it end to end, regardless of if you deploy it, regardless of what you do with it. But I think committing to building one single thing that is fully functional end to end is quite important in the learning journey and in a journey that really kind of coincides and resonates with what one would do with these AI coding assistants. So that is really going to be today's whole video. And I do want to mention, like, because I'm standing here, it's because of the whiteboard. I'm not trying to sell you something. This isn't a sponsored video. This isn't a lead into a sponsored segment, but I did just kind of want to change it up, not because I want to test out my new wireless microphone sponsored. No, I'm kidding. All right. So here is a Fiverr gig that I just made where basically I will generate a 3D mesh for anything you want. Now, this is obviously very simple. And if you are keeping in line with some of the open source releases that do exist, it is quite trivial to actually get something that will do text to mesh or image to mesh or something like that. However, that is a piece of software or framework or AI tool that is going to get better over time. So I think basing this example on that is a good first step, because we're not locked into something that can become obsolete, at least for the foreseeable near future, if you will. Now, this is my own gig, and if I go into the order page back here, this is also my own order. So obviously no one has actually purchased this. Fiverr is very saturated and things like that. So this is not a suggestion to go on Fiverr and automate gigs because you'll make a ton of money, because you very likely won't. But from an architectural standpoint, this is a very lucrative, I guess lucrative is the wrong word. This is a very good example because it shows a way that can actually make money that can be completely automated with no human interaction. So that's basically exactly what we're going to see right now. So I'm just going to leave the browser on this order page right here. From within this Conda environment, I'm going to simply run this script right here to basically run my Fiverr pipeline live. And as soon as I press enter here, the computer is going to take control just by itself. It will go ahead and refresh this page to check to see if I have any new orders. Once that's done, it is going to click on the order. It's going to use OmniParser from Microsoft to parse the actual order there, which is I need a monster truck with big tires. It will then use that parse string to send a prompt to a text-to-mesh program, Cube3D from Roblox. It will use the GPUs, the beefy GPUs, to generate that text-to-mesh program, and then to generate the text-to-mesh. So it will generate an object file of a monster truck with big tires. Once that generation has been completed, it will click the deliver now. It pastes in some generic message. It will go here, search for output. It will select the new file, open it. It will wait 20 seconds to allow this to actually generate the object right there to allow it time to upload. And then hypothetically, I haven't tested this part so far, it should then go down and click the deliver button right there, which really would be a completely autonomous with no human interaction system that would go ahead and basically do this. Now, I don't know if Fiverr's going to ask it to deliver. No. So that was, thank God that worked, because I didn't want to have to keep buying my own gig. It's just like a waste of money. Even if I can check it out, they take a decent cut now. So that was an entirely autonomous pipeline Fiverr gig right there. I didn't do anything. You saw I had my hands up like this, basically like I was being interrogated. And this just shows one of many things that I think are not well represented in the AI YouTube content sphere, where no one talks to us about how to actually go beyond using an AI coding assistant. It's awesome to learn RuCode's newest cool optimization, but no one talks about, okay, I know how to use RuCode at a decent level. What do I then do with it? And that is why I want to do this video as a tutorial of building this, because it will teach us a more architectural foundation of understanding of what we do when we know enough to do things. Now, some important things about this specific pipeline that I want to make note of. I can go ahead now here, just back to the terminal, because we can see it just did all of that by itself autonomously, and I didn't have to do anything. Every single script running this was written by an AI with a bit of prompting of myself, just basically having to tell it like, hey, OmniParser is not a Python package. You need to import it based off of this Gradio script that they offer as a web example, so we'll run it kind of like a server. BS like that, that knowing how to use RuCode and things like that pivots you perfectly to then be able to do. On top of this, what I think is the most important thing here is, if this was a service I was planning to offer in terms of something that would actually make me money, this has more of a, it's more obsolescence proof, because every single library or AI thing that I just used here will iteratively improve, and they're all open source. So OmniParser, which right here just basically took a screenshot of these coordinates right here under step 4 and then parsed it as a string and sent it to the text-to-mesh program as an input prompt. Every single one of those AI tools that I just mentioned are going to improve, which means that my product will then improve as those tools improve. And really, this comes into like, I talk to businesses every day where basically I have to tell them like, I understand you want to make something and make it your own, but by the time you spent all of that development cost on basically replicating something that exists as API access, your MVP will be obsolete, and you have wasted all of your pre-seed on actually going ahead and spending money reinventing the wheel. When something like this is akin to that, where instead of worrying about like, well, I need to make a parsing tool and then I need to make the tool to actually generate the mesh, we're just leveraging things that already exist that are going to get better, and we're building a skeletal framework around them that takes advantage of them, knowing that our skeletal framework product will get better as these tools we're using get better. Now, this gig is something I wanted to build just for this video. It's not going to be up. I'm not going to keep it up because I think it does the best job of illustrating the kind of thing that I think is prudent and important to actually start to learn once you have a basic grasp of some form of coding or coding assistant, regardless of what system that may be. So I essentially envision, and I would be quite happy to be wrong here, I do just want to point this out, that in, say, 5 years, there is going to be, say, the top X number of OpenAI, Claude, Google, Anthropic, you know what I mean. But basically, there will be the top few companies that offer their services, and they will go far beyond now, like just having LLMs and things like that. I do believe that in the future, take a platform like Fiverr, where you go on Fiverr, you find someone to do a gig for you, you send them your requirements, they work on it, and then you get the gig back. That is, unfortunately, in my opinion, ripe to be decimated by what I think is coming in the future based off these AI systems, where basically I have a requirement. Say my requirement is this little box right here. I send it to Fiverr, who currently has a middleman there who kind of, Fiverr is the middleman, but they have to delegate the task to a freelancer, and then Fiverr gets a cut of that just basically for hosting the platform and offering the service. So here's my requirements, here's the freelancer that it gets sent to. I suppose this arrow would be Fiverr, who is the middleman. But basically, the way I see things going is that these top labs are going to have services and products where, and again, this is very digitally focused. This isn't like building a table or something like that where you need the wood, you need the carpenter, etc. But basically, I think there are going to be text to product tools in the near future that are basically going to get rid of a lot of opportunities that currently exist in somewhere like Fiverr, where, okay, I need this system built, or I need this little mesh design, or I need this logo. Why would Fiverr continue having to pay money for folks like that when in reality, they could likely do it cheaper just using API credits or a deal with one of these top labs who would offer a service that would replace that person? There's less overhead, it's streamlined, and you need less people. And this is why I said that I would be quite happy to be incorrect about all of this. This is quite scary. So that's why I want to do, I mean, basically, like, sorry if I'm getting like overly excited, but if I'm gonna spend time like doing an educational video, I don't just want to show you like how well a model does in RuCode or something like that, because to be honest with you, I think it's more important to kind of learn to be the barnacle that sticks to the whale, or whatever the sea life thing is, where basically you build something that relies on the offerings from these top tier people, so it will iteratively improve as their technology improves. I do believe in the near future that for folks who are basically like freelancers or contractors, or not like day job coders who probably just want to use those coding assistants and then keep their head down and your productivity's way up, your work's way better, and it's kick-ass. But for folks like myself who do like contracting, freelancing, consulting for businesses and things like that, I do believe that probably 90% of the future options that people come to us wanting right now will be taken up by these top X number of companies with some form of offering. So that leaves a small kind of like 10% here that I would assess is probably too small for these companies to even care about going after. It wouldn't be worth it for them. And that's why I kind of made like the barnacle on the whale kind of analogy, if you will. So that is the whole point of today's video, is we're not going to be doing a tutorial so much as like, here's how we make this one thing. This tutorial is hopefully something like, here is how to think about making things that will likely be a little more future-proof, but we're also going to be actually making something. So again, this is a very different video, and I will be going back to like model reviews and stuff like that, and like device reviews, tutorials, but I do want to do this because I think that there is a lack of good direction out there in terms of like, what do we do when we actually know how to build things? All right, so now that this has all been kind of demonstrated, we can actually go ahead and just kind of take a look at what lies beneath. And truthfully, this is all really quite simple, and that is why I thought it was like a very cool example, at least to do. So basically we have a few scripts right here. Let me hop over into my environment, which contains all of these things. And this, of course, is the actual object that was outputted for the user's prompt and then sent. Yeah, does it look like crap? Yeah, but again, this isn't something I'm saying like, use this and you'll make money off suckers, but it worked well enough to be a proof of concept. So essentially, we have a few different things here. The Cube folder is just basically the cloned GitHub repository for the Roblox Cube3D software that does text to mesh. I'm sorry, there's like an eyelash in my field of view and it is frustrating me. Aside from that, we have the OmniParser GitHub clone right here, which OmniParser we all know and love is Microsoft's screen parsing tool, where it takes a screenshot of the screen, it identifies different things, it draws bounding boxes around them, and then in addition to that, we'll actually do like OCR or parse the actual text and things like that on the screen. So it's very good for like autonomous control, where the agent or whatever needs to actually see what's on the screen so it can then navigate. Following that, first and arguably one of the most important things, and something that allows this to be dumb simple, probably beyond what you'd want in a deployment environment, is the config.py right here. So this is literally a bunch of screen coordinates for this specific display, which is a 1920 by 1080 display, where we use PyAuto GUI, which is a computer automation system. I don't know why I said automation like that, but basically it will control the mouse and know where to click. So I got these coordinates for it manually, just running a little script that basically printed out where on the screen my mouse was, like for the refresh button, for the button to press deliver and things like that. So this is all really as well just dumb simple because it's coordinates in a simple way that can be manually controlled to where we need it to be. Following that, we have our Fiverr pipeline. So this kind of just controls the logic of this, and it is just set here not to loop, but just to perform once, because if it was looping, it would require far more work than I'm willing to put into this right now. No, but it would be too like in depth, if you will. So really, this is just kind of like a loop. So, okay, we refresh the page, then we take a screenshot of this and we shoot it over to OmniParser and things like that. So OmniParser can basically take the customer's requirements and then send that as a prompt to the Cube3D text to mesh. Then following that, once that's done, we click deliver now. We paste in the thank you message, which is right here, which we saw being pasted into the text box. Following that, we have the file dialog right here, which was actually kind of a pain in the butt because I had to just kind of manually tell it where everything was. There would be better ways to do this, obviously, but then basically it opens the file dialog. It has to search for the newest file named output, and then it selects that, selects upload. Then once that's done, it waits 20 seconds because it can take a little bit of time to actually upload the final object file, and then it clicks deliver, and then it ends. So that's our Fiverr pipeline live script, which is akin to an orchestrator, but it orchestrates the logic and functionality of the system, if you will. Following that, we have the OmniParser wrapper right here. And in like keeping with some of the things we do with vibe coding and like the tools like RuCode and what they're good at, this was all vibe coded, where basically I went to this is what I mean when I said I want to kind of show how this was built. So I just went to OmniParser. I went to the GitHub here that Microsoft has, because when I asked the AI to actually go ahead and implement OmniParser into this system, it was just trying to import it as a Python package, and it was not going to work that way because it was functionally incorrect. So basically all I did was go to the GitHub repository for the specific thing that I wanted implemented, in this case OmniParser, and I basically went to the Gradio demo right here, and I sent it this and said, okay, here's the Gradio demo. And I sent it some things from like the utils right here in omniparser.py. Now I was using ChatGPT for all of this, but again, it's less with like the specific AI we used and more about like architecturally how it was built. And I sent it all this and said, this is how we implement OmniParser, so use this. It's not a Python package. And then boom, we have our script there that's functional. In that same vein, I did the exact same thing with Cube3D, where I just kind of pasted some of the GitHub README to it and said, okay, here's how this works. Here's the specific command line code to actually prompt this to generate a mesh. And then it went ahead and generated the correct associated script for that as well, like we see right here, the mesh generator. The only thing I will mention is I'm running this on a 3090 Ti, which is a 24 gig. And if you did have the fast inference flag enabled here, and this is very specific, but for Cube3D, it would out of memory because the overhead of everything else was just too much. So I disabled that, and it's using around 16 or 17 gigs of VRAM for this whole pipeline process right here, which I suppose I should mention. But basically like 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 scripts are things that, like, if you watch some videos on RuCode and things like that and just learn enough about them to become dangerous, then you're dangerous enough to put all of this together. And that is the kind of video I wanted to make. And again, I know this is very different from my traditional video, but I wanted to demonstrate what can be done when we know something about these AI coding assistants and things like that. So this is almost like the chapter that would come after knowing how to use those coding assistants. And again, I place a very high level of importance personally on building things that will scale with the technological advancements that also will be coming. So instead of worrying like, oh no, I need to make a program about how to build my own mesh, I'm going to use one that exists. And then if that one becomes obsolete, I'm going to just replace the call to it with the better one. And I think that's a really important thing. And I understand this may not be so applicable, I suppose, to folks who are just like vibe coding for hobbies and things like that. But I know there are a ton of folks out there who want to actually build things that make money. And I think this is a correct way to do it. And architecturally, there are a lot of considerations that are never really talked about, at least anywhere I've seen. So I wanted to share kind of just the simplicity of what this actually was, but it was potent and something that would be better with every new release of the software that it relies upon. And this is something that can be vibe coded with RuCode or any single coding agent, assuming that your backend LLM that you're using is powerful enough. Yeah, so there are more things I want to talk about, but really I'm going to put this all on GitHub, because assuming you have the cards and stuff like that, and there's like some conda environment setup BS you have to deal with, which I'll outline, but it's very reproducible and it's fun to play with just as a end-to-end, like, hey, I built this or I reproduced this and it works. And now I have a real hands-on example that I can then use as a framework starting point to then have RuCode be like, okay, take this script, but instead of doing mesh, I want it to be a stable diffusion backend where it just does text to image based off of the customer's requirements or something like that. So this is kind of like a starting point to play with and do some fun things of that sort, I suppose one could say. That's probably going to wrap this video. Truthfully, I did not have a real agenda for this. I just kind of wanted to do something that I thought would provide some like less covered examples, I suppose you could say, as opposed to just like, all right, I'm going to test Qwen 3 in RuCode. Let's see how it does, which is cool and fun, but I'd rather just test them in LM Studio using my own foolish HTML prompts and things of the sort. So I figured this was a good kind of like middle ground of, okay, here, let me show something somewhat educational and functional, but I also want to just like foolishly test models as well. So I will be doing that. All right, like I always say, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.